Some say he's a technical whiz. Some say he was born in Cornwall. While some say he's on a journey. It's The Journey, and here's your host, David Hackett.
Hi everyone, another journey, and today's journey features a personal and traumatic story of struggle and hardship, which is covered in their debut book entitled Don't Hold Back. It has given our guests the positive tools and focus that they needed to fight back, to create a powerhouse of strength, compassion and dedication to living. Our guest today is going to talk about this and much, much more as we welcome Emma Jane Taylor to the journey.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure. Now, everyone has a journey. Reading through the bio, obviously, your journey is, as you know, from what we can see in the t-shirt you're wearing for the people on YouTube, and we will discuss it for the audio side of things. But your journey wasn't the easiest of starts of journey, but everyone has their beginnings. What was your earliest memory that got your journey where you are now?
Well, do you know what? I think there was lots of things that sort of I can look back and reflect on. And I think, it was around sort of like about 6 or 7 years ago when I was working on That's TV in Oxford, and I was interviewing someone about their journey and their personal life. And it was the first time that it hit me that I was sat there and obviously no one knew of my troubles. And I was seen as someone who had achieved a lot and who was running different businesses. Yet, of course, behind that was the fact that I had worked very hard to be that person running the business, and so on and so forth, because the struggles of the darkness of my journey had been very intense. When I look back, I recognise I had such deep issues with addictions and disorders, and I had to battle so much just to be present in my own life. I never for 1 minute thought I'd be a campaigner or an author or, a charity boss or, starting a movement across the world. I just wanted peace. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to feel much stronger in myself about who I was as a person. So, when I look back, I remember sort of, like I say, working on That's TV in Oxford thinking, God, I feel a fraud because I have gone through so much to be the woman that I am today. And that's sort of where this whole journey started for me, really.
And because obviously it goes in, like I said, and it says about being a survivor of child sex abuse, abandonment and rejection. And then you drank throughout your teenage years, took drugs, became bulimic. Do you feel like some of these things you were doing because you wanted to seek validation in yourself because of what happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when I look back, there was a lot of things that I did because it was easier to do them and cover up a whole host of other darkness and problems around me. So it was easier to sort of blot that out with the addictions and the things that I was doing. So, it also, the bulimia allowed me to be in control. Of course, I wasn't in control, but I felt like I was in control by just controlling everything around me, good and bad. But of course, all of that became self-harming, really, because I was damaging myself so greatly. But it did allow me sort of to feel better for moments. And I took those moments. Of course, I realized that it wasn't making me feel better at all. It was just buying me time to get through to the next sort of recovery stage of my life.
Yeah, and this way it is because I suffer from eczema and I've had issues in my life. And when I was growing up, I just thought me itching my eczema was a way of just de-stressing. But I learned later on, and it wasn't people telling me, it was just what I learned myself. They said it was form of self-harm because that was my way of getting every emotion out. So that's why I did, because it was self-harm, even though it isn't to the obvious eye because you're scratching. But yeah, they said it was self-harm because I was scratching myself where I was bleeding and it looked bad.
Mm. Yeah, and all of that was sort of the way that you could control things yourself. And, for someone who absolutely has used all sorts of things to get by. I also had eczema actually, but my eczema was, because of the difficulties that I'd had. I truly believe my eczema was an extension of my mind. And actually, when I wasn't feeling very good about myself, my eczema would flare up. Or if I ate sugary foods, my eczema would flare up. Touch wood, I haven't had eczema since. But all of that really was in the pot of trouble for me, and I understand how that will have affected you as well. It's
Yeah.
it's hard.
And, you know, for me personally, it's there when I'm stressed and when I'm majorly upset. So, touch wood, I haven't been majorly ill with my eczema for the last 2, 3 years because I had it 3 years ago when I was in hospital because I had sepsis with it and it turned quite nasty. So,
Mm.
by the age of 15, it goes on to say you're exhausted by life, addicted and struggling with various disorders, and your school life as a consequence struggled. He was often put into isolation. This sounds like me all over again. Often on
Yeah.
report, given regular detentions or suspended. And he was labelled a juvenile delinquent by a child psychiatric at the age of 14. Now, I can relate to that because I was always that problem, if you want to put it in the nicest way. I was that issue where I was in isolation. I was on report. But this was your way of coping at a young age, and no one really understood it because obviously when you're younger in the generation, not the modern generation, but our generation, people misunderstood it because they just like to say, "Oh, it's this," and slap a quick label on you.
Mm. Absolutely, and that's a really important conversation to have because I was 1972 baby, so I was in the 80s in senior school, and we just didn't talk about these kind of conversation society issues like we do today. And it's understanding them, isn't there? So if there is a child behaving in a way that isn't as what people could perceive as normal, although I question what normal is these days, then who is looking behind that child? Who is looking to see what's going on in their life? Have you had any kind of have you got any folders open to see why these children are behaving this way? Has it been a consistent behavior, or is it just a one-off? Whatever it is, it needs looking at. And so instead of writing children off and putting them down as naughty children. Children aren't naughty. Children aren't bad. Children are nice. We start life so innocently. It's what happens to us along the way that creates the behavior and difficulties that many face. So I think we've moved forward a great deal, but I don't think we're anywhere close to where we should be on these conversations. And certainly if you go back to my childhood in the 80s where we didn't talk about it, where we are talking about it now, but we're not talking about it in a way that I think is helping actually, because now we've got social media, we've got technology, we've got the internet, we've got a great big world out there that children are just not sorry, my phone just rang. I don't know if you want to edit that out. I'll start that. If you
Oh yeah.
If you can cut and paste that bit, that would be great. Yes, when you look at society today and the technology that is going on around us, children aren't being educated to use the technology, the internet, the social media. They're just being given a phone. And some children as young as sort of 7, 8, 9, and they are finding quite quickly their way around the world and resources that are very damaging. And that's so we are moved forward, but we're now not catching up with technology. And there's this sort of big gap that really needs looking at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense because obviously when we was in school, we just had the traditional school books, paper, we had basic internet probably for myself, but in the society of how schools are running now, they give children, and I'm not condoning it because this is just our pure thoughts, it's not reflecting on anything else, but the fact is they give them iPads. They give them,
Yes.
tablets of any description, and obviously they say it's monetized where they control it, but that's still accessible for anyone to go on and access and look up things.
Mm, absolutely. And that's what we need to sort of really control and help young people with. And, personally, I don't think we should give children such big technology at such a young age. I think there should be much more training in primary schools before a child goes on to have that piece of technology that connects the world, because they're finding and seeing things that they just shouldn't be. And that is causing great problems for the society, for that generation.
Because I touched upon what happened with you as a child about surviving child abuse. This is a common thing that is on today's society with technology. It's not a simple of a, they get, go on the internet. It's easy. There's no way of stopping these things, even though they say there is safeguards in place. There is loopholes around it.
Mm. Yeah,
Now,
loads of
now
loopholes.
I use social media quite, often. I don't use Facebook as much as I used to, but you got social media apps like TikTok. Don't get me wrong, I got TikTok, but at the
Yes.
same time, there is dangers on TikTok. There's dangers on Snapchat. There's dangers where they get people to be, and this is a common one I've been reading about. You get people saying, "I like to chat to you." Okay, I chat to you. You don't know who they are. They give you this image, and now if you don't know the website, you can't cross-reference that web, picture with that website, which is a useful tool as well. I find that's how I find out if it's
Mm.
real or not. And then they say, "Oh, I don't want to chat here. I feel like I'm not here often. Let's go to," and they then give you a Google Meet chat. Now, that's the most
Mm.
common place for, and I will say, event abusers are, because they say, chat us on Google Chat.
Yes.
Google is the most popular site out there. You go on there, you give your details, they will sell it pretty much, and
Absolutely.
and then exploit you.
Yes. And, children are being exploited well, every second of every day, really, but a lot of them don't realize they're being exploited. A lot of parents don't realize they're being exploited in the way they are. And so, how do we stop that? How do we get that? How do we make that change to like close that down? Well, I think sometimes like I say, give children of a primary school a phone, just a phone, like the bricks that we had when we were growing up. And then, as they go to their senior school, you can start introducing the bigger technology, but there has to be training behind it. There has to be awareness and also the dangers around this, so that parents and children can be much more much more wise around what they're doing and the decisions that they're making.
Yeah. So we touched upon the past. Now we're going into the present because obviously we have to be mindful because you've already told me you've got to be finished by a certain time. So I'm trying to condense it quickly into one.
No, that's fine.
But talking about your present, you've shown a t-shirt for the people who are listening. She's wearing it, I would describe it as a white t-shirt. It's probably blue, but the way the camera looks is white. And it's got the campaign that you've got set up, and I like the words that's written. Can you explain and tell us what the words are for the people?
Yes, so
Listening?
this is a campaign I launched this year. It's called #NotMyShame. Now, this is about 2, 3 years ago. I kind of started floating around this conversation. I was realizing that there's a lot of media around perpetrators. There's a lot of noise about what they're up to, what they're doing, and I was like, I'm kind of a bit sick of this, right? There are so many survivors swirling around, feeling just unheard, triggered by all the journalists and media and attention that the press give to perpetrators. And I wanted to turn that around. And so I created this campaign. I threw out a comment about 2 years ago. I said, it's not my shame. I'm not afraid to say I was sexually abused as a child. I was a child, and it's not my shame. So, and it was not my fault. It was not my shame. And I think those are the things that we really need to be clear when we're helping people on these conversations, because people are just, like I say, people are just not feeling heard. And if we can help people feel heard and help turn this conversation, so not just survivors, also allies can start having a better understanding of a conversation that has suppressed survivors for such a long time, then I think the breakthrough will be huge, and it will be a conversation that gets recognized. I think it will be, much more comfortable. It's going to take some time, right? And it's not a comfortable conversation to have. No one really wants to talk about child sexual abuse apart from survivors. But we really need to start having more conversations, because we know that there's some allies. There are partners out there supporting survivors. There are partners out there trying to understand this conversation. And we need to sort of help put it out there. So I put it on a t-shirt. There's so many great causes on t-shirts around the world, for every charity and movement out there. And I thought, what, why not child sexual abuse? Why don't we make this a thing? Anyway, I put the t-shirt out there because I just didn't feel like I wanted to hide anymore. I sort of felt, why shouldn't I wear this t-shirt that exposes someone else's secrets? Because like millions of others, I've harbored that secret for most of my life. And of course, I really do understand why I did this, but I don't want to anymore. It's quite simple. It's not my shame. I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be empowering survivors, turning up the volume on this conversation, and and getting it out there. So, I put it on a t-shirt. Someone else was like, oh, actually, I like that. Can I have a t-shirt? And it's grown and grown and grown. We're selling in Australia, America, Canada, Dubai, South Africa, Pakistan, and obviously a lot of Europe as well. So yeah, it's been huge. We've got soap stars, pop stars, journalists coming in to support the movement and have their picture taken, or share a video. I've just had someone from Coronation Street share a video wearing the t-shirt as well. So yeah, it's huge, and I'm proud to be here.
Yeah, and I support it because obviously I wasn't a child. Yeah, I was mentally abused as a child. I'm not going to go into that, but I was sexually abused the year I left home, which was when I was 18. So I always, for so long, held that inside me. I'm not ashamed to admit it now, because you said it's not my shame. But the fact is, abuse can happen at any age, from a young, and you remember the case probably as well. You hear about the situation when young babies die unnecessarily. Yes, they got punished, the people involved, and I think you know what I'm talking about. The case in London in 2006, I think it was. He was abused as a young baby. He got killed because of that instance. So, but he hasn't got a voice to come here in 10 years' time and say it's not my shame. But people who do know what I'm talking about, like I said, I'm trying to not talk about it because it's not here now, and it's not my place to go legally into the legalities of it. But the fact is, he got killed because he was abused. He wasn't protected.
Mm. And these stories are so sad, David, so sad. And like you say, that child now can't be with us to say it's not my shame, because they had their life taken from them in so many ways, obviously from being sexually abused, and now obviously not here because they've lost their life. So, and that makes me feel really sad, because I know that story has repeated many times over the years. And, so the survivors that are here standing up to be heard are doing so because of the children that aren't here, and that we can make that voice, we can be present. And actually, as I step forward, the voices get bigger and bigger and bigger. People who I know very well are stepping forward to tell me. Now, they might have known me for years, but now they feel comfortable to say, actually, yeah, that did happen to me once. And, and I'm thinking, goodness, how many people across the world have been sexually abused as children, but either don't want to talk about it, have suppressed that memory so much that it's not even part of, it's not even on their radar anymore. And it should be, because it's serious, and we can't just push this away and pretend it doesn't happen.
It's like I've been reading, and I'm not saying I've been over reading it, but there's been a famous scenario, where I don't know how much you've heard of it, but there was a person who complained about a certain celebrity abusing them when they were in, I think they were in a school for, girls who had issues in life. And it came out that this person abused her. And now that person who abused her is not here anymore, but it shows that the, damage that it did to that person, because that person was damaged for life. Now they've written 8 books talking about her life. And, I haven't interviewed her, but I've watched her interviews on YouTube. I've read her books, so I can understand. But it doesn't get easier as you get older, because people say it gets easier once you tell it, but it doesn't, because the damage is there, the scars are still there, things still do happen to you.
Yeah, and I think all of this kind of circles back to the fact that we just cannot just sit here and suppress and pretend that nothing untoward had happened because we want to keep the peace. We need to step through and say, look, this happened, and it wasn't right. And we need to spread the word, because there'll be other people around who are facing similar difficulties because of what happened to them. And that's why this conversation now is vital, that we grow and expand it so that we can reach people, really. We can reach people. And just by doing these interviews, these podcasts, by putting a campaign together, you're reaching people. It's dropping, it's dropping that stone in the pond and watching the ripple of people going, actually, yeah, okay, I might not want to wear a t-shirt, I might not want to speak out loud, but it did happen to me, and actually maybe I should go and get some help, maybe I should speak to somebody, maybe I should document it.
Yeah, and your debut book, Don't Hold Book, is that talking about what happened as you grew up with your issues, or is it just helping people?
Yeah, it is. So the book is called Don't Hold Back, and it's a motivational toolbook based on my own journey in life and what I went through to be who I am today. And like I said, I mean, I never for 1 minute thought I would be here sort of speaking up and out, or with a campaign, or with a book, or so on and so forth, but I've done it because I know how important it is for others to hear other people's stories, not just mine. I mean, anybody who's gone through this, sharing their story is going to be helpful to somebody. And so, you might not want to, my book is very motivational. It's a tool book. So there's lots of things in there that can give thought process to how you might want to sort of look at your therapy, your healing, your recovery. There was obviously chapters on my story, but mine was much more about my recovery. And I found, I wrote that many times before I actually sort of didn't delete it. I kept writing and deleting, writing and deleting, writing and deleting. And then suddenly I was like, no, I want to write. I want to get it out. It was like I was, regurgitating years and years and years, and it was just coming out. And as it was coming out, it was just hugely liberating. And then obviously got the confidence to take it forward and out into the public. But yeah, so that book sort of came about because I really sort of wanted to give back some hope to somebody, just to sort of say, look, you're not alone, and together we can all make a big difference on this.
Yeah, and I applaud you for actually giving that message to show people that there is hope, even if it seems like there isn't. There is hope for someone out there.
Yes.
And it's good to talk in that way.
It really is. When I first spoke out on a big scale, I found it terribly nerve-wracking. And I felt sick actually, but after I had done it, I felt very, I think, very empowered. And even if I kind of sort of felt, even if I never spoke about this again, I had, I had got something out which I hope would give someone some hope. So, just by doing that allowed me some sort of freedom from this conversation. And that night I got home and I had an inbox full of people saying, I've just listened to you speak at this event. Thank you. It gave me some hope and inspiration. So it did that. It ticked a box. And like I say, from then, that was in 2016 to now, 7 years later. And here we are. I mean, so much has happened since then. The journey that has gone on has been huge.
And it's instances of what I always like about when I hear people when they've done it. The TEDx speaker, damn, that's a bigger platform than just talking to 100 people. You're talking to potentially more than you expect. So that was a big step for you as well.
That was a huge, huge step. And it was the TED Talk was something that I'd really wanted to do for a long time, because my message was, about the 90-10 statistic. And, I really wanted to get that out there, that 90% of children that are being abused by someone they know, yet we are only educating the 10% of stranger danger. And it's kind of not really balanced at all in that respect, because we know that child sexual abuse is, much more prevalent within the network of people known to the victim. So so I was really chuffed to get that out there, and I spent a lot of work on it just to make sure that I had the talk track right for this message. So and it went out in 2021, and it's had some, it's good response, which has been nice. And I've had great feedback from it. So
and I'm going to make sure I put the link in the description post edit. But
thank you.
Going forward, how do you feel the advancements are going? Do you feel like there is going to be better advancements in understanding child abuse as a whole, or do you feel like it's going to remain static and remain where people do get it out, but it isn't going to be out there?
Well, I'm going to have to say we have to have a change, right? Because it wouldn't, otherwise all this work that I'm doing would just not feel like it's being done in a positive space. Yes, there has to be change. Yes, there has to be a better education and support system and network for survivors, for victims, for safeguarding teams, for children. So I think already we are stepping forward. There's campaigns out there. There is charities doing great work out there already. The work that I'm doing with my charity, Project 9010, is about education and protection and awareness. So we are looking at working with safeguarding teams and parents, doing awareness campaigns and events to really raise awareness for child sexual abuse. So in my world, yes, I absolutely see that there's a change. The dynamic has changed. The conversations have changed, even within my own personal life. Across the world, I do see a change, but my greatest fear is that we're we're miles ahead on technology conversations around child sexual abuse. So we know it's there. There are lots of good conversations happening online and in the media about the difficulties of the online world and sexual abuse and predators. But we're nowhere close to where we should be. And there needs to be, that gap is so big, we need to close that. We need some bigger investments, and that obviously we need to come from probably the government. But we don't get that. And so there is this void at the moment, but I know that there are some good people out there doing some good work. So I think we're a lot further ahead now than we were when I was in the 1980s, but we need to keep that up, to keep up with technology, to keep up with the way the world is adapting and, you know, the growth of this conversation.
Okay, and obviously there is websites and ways people can get in contact with you. How can people get in contact with you or get a copy of your book?
So if you go to my website, www.emmajanetaylor.com, if you go on there, you will find links to all of my social media. You'll find links to my campaigning, to all documents and articles around me and the work that I'm doing in the space of child sexual abuse. There's contact forms there, so you can have a good look, and you'll find out a way to either join the campaign, put on a t-shirt and be part of it, or even just using the hashtag. It all helps along the way with this movement.
And one last ultimate question. What would you say to people watching or listening to this now to help them move forward, to feel like there is something there for them?
Because I think it has to go back to the not my shame, and I think it has to go back to remind us all that child sexual abuse is not fault of the child. They did nothing wrong. They were just children. It's not their shame. There is a lot of resources out there. There is a lot of people to support, to listen, to help, to signpost, but more importantly, for them to know that they are just not alone and never have been.
It has been a pleasure talking to you about your journey. I hope we are getting that one step forward in helping others understand youth and help, develop the way that they can never feel alone.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure, and it's been great to talk to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was The Journey, hosted by Wise Words Imaging, hosted by David Hackett. Be sure to like, subscribe and listen to another journey coming soon.